Video game adaptations. What are they? Why are they made? Well, in this video, I'll be giving you my opinion on them and also giving you my top 5 ever made. Firstly, what is a video game adaptation? Well, a video game adaptation is a video game that has been created into either a TV show or film. This can be either live action or animated. There's been a lot made throughout the years, the first one being Pac-Man, made back in 1982. They were first considered jokes because they were low quality films that misunderstood their source material. But in the later 2010s, they started to make a comeback and began receiving critical acclaim and commercial success. This shift was driven by creators prioritizing faithfulness to their source material, increased budgets, and the adoption of high-quality television formats. There are some that definitely feel like they did not need an adaptation, but some games became a lot more popular because of their adaptation. At number 5, I have the Five Nights at Freddy's movies. I've put this on my list as I was a huge FNAF fan when I was younger, and when I saw both of the new live-action films, they quickly became some of my favourites. FNAF was a huge game and had a very big fandom, so when they announced they were making movies, a lot of people were very excited for them. There are a lot of opinions on these movies, with people saying stuff like problems with character development, and it's too childish for adults and too mature for children. Which I do think is true to an extent, but personally, I thoroughly enjoyed them. These movies were definitely not made for a casual movie watcher or even a critic. It was made for the fans of the games. I believe they made these movies as well as they could have. They used real animatronics to help with the realism of the animatronics, which is exactly what people wanted. Now moving on to number 4, with the Angry Birds movie. I've put this on my list as I used to play Angry Birds all the time, and I also loved the movie when it first came out. Angry Birds has been a huge game franchise since 2009, so when they announced they were going to be making it into a movie, a lot of fans were extremely excited. When it came out, it was easily liked by a lot of people. People were saying stuff like, Angry Birds could have been an unmitigated disaster, and it was a big relief to see that it didn't even come close to that. Or, people also said, benefits from a good voice cast, bright and beautiful animation, and very funny and charming moments.
Wow, that blows! In a good way!
This also proves that there were not very high expectations for this movie, so people were very shocked when it came out. I guess that having a good voice cast really does help with making an animated movie much more enjoyable. At number 3, I've put Detective Pikachu. The reason I've put this on my list is because the Pokemon movies will have a special place in my heart, and if I could, I would put all of them on this list, but there are just so many adaptations for things that I could not. Pokemon was first introduced in 1997, but the game Detective Pikachu was released back in 2016. When the game came out, it was loved by many Pokemon fans. I do believe that a movie was always wanted, as the movie came out only 3 years later in 2019. The movie was a huge success, not just for Pokemon films, but for video game adaptations. This movie made loads of people realise that video game adaptations can be extremely successful in the film industry. It also broke the stigma of bad video game adaptations by treating its source material with care and detail, offering a nostalgic, yet new experience for both long-time fans and newcomers. Critics were saying stuff like, Detective Pikachu is a great type that is well worth watching in the theatre, if for nothing more than its gorgeous visuals, and how it's a love letter to the world of Pokemon and easily the best video game adaptation movie ever made. Critics like this movie so much because it does what a lot of people like to see in movies. An example is the visuals. The visuals in this movie are extremely well done. The world and what the Pokemon look like are the main visuals. The Pokemon were made to look as realistic as possible without making them look extremely scary. This is because it was made for a kids/family film. At number 2, I've put The Last of Us. I don't really need to explain why this is on my list for a matter of reasons, but I will. The Last of Us was an extremely huge and successful game before the TV show even came out, but because of how successful the show actually was, the game gained even more popularity, making it one of the most watched shows and played games ever made. The show was made extremely well, especially for a live action. The settings, the visuals, actors, acting, graphics, CGI, all played such huge roles in the creation of this show. This was much needed as it would have been extremely difficult to create the realism factor with just costumes and small sets. Everyone knew that the show would be a huge hit, just based off the trailers, and people were definitely tuned in because of Pedro Pascal as Joel. But Bella Ramsey also did a phenomenal job as Ellie, even though loads of people might have disagreed. But putting all of that aside, the show met a lot of people's expectations, with critics saying The Last of Us is both the first truly great video game adaptation and beautifully constructed piece of television, and how it's also a phenomenal adaptation that successfully transformed the beloved and iconic franchise to a new medium that completely elevates the story. The Last of Us has also won 9 Emmys. This shows people that video game adaptations are finally being accepted as a serious genre in the film industry. Before I get to my number 1 adaptation, I want to say some of the adaptations that did not make it into my top 5, but still deserve some recognition. In no specific order, I have Fallout, the Super Mario movie, Rampage, Until Dawn, Dungeons & Dragons, and Gran Turismo. Now, let's get into number 1. And finally, for my number 1 video game adaptation, I put Arcane. This is one of my favourite TV shows of all time, and anyone who knows me has heard me mention it at least once to them before. This show introduced me to a lot of new animation techniques, and it also introduced me to what League of Legends was. I personally have never played it, but I've heard they are not similar in any way apart from the characters. There are a lot of characters in Arcane. Some of the main characters are called Vi, Caitlyn, and Jinx. Jinx is my personal favourite character because I love her design and she has a very fun personality.
That's me!
What I think Arcane does really well as an animation is the fight scenes, because it is always so smooth and there's never anything that looks out of place. Arcane also has 2 seasons, and sadly, there will not be any more. There were many famous actors that voiced some of the characters in Arcane. For example, Hailee Steinfeld voiced Vi, and Ella Purnell voiced Jinx. Having these actors did also help with the success of this show, and they actually did an amazing job with it. Critics thought very highly of Arcane, with people saying stuff like Arcane is a landmark for both video game adaptations and animation, and also how Arcane packs a gloriously mean punch. Arcane has also won 8 Emmys, making it one of the most successful animations of all time. If this doesn't prove to you that it's an amazing adaptation, then I don't know what will. It also made a big impact for animation as a whole, and also video game adaptations. Well, that concludes my list. I hope you enjoyed learning about these amazing adaptations just as much as I enjoyed talking about them. I hope I have influenced you to watch these adaptations either now or in the future. Thank you for watching.